Hello friends, welcome to my Booktube channel. I started this new channel last week, and instead of posting a Booktube Newbie Tag video, I jumped into a short introduction and I also started posting videos. Some of the booktubers who are in YouTube for a long time, I did seek feedback from them and they recommended that I do a proper Booktube Newbie video. And that's when I learned that there is a way to do this. So I went ahead and looked at a lot of booktube YouTubers and how they did it. And apparently there is a set of questions that they go by, and the newbie booktuber will give answers to those questions, and that way it kind of covers all the questions the subscribers might have, and also they will get an idea of the person's background, uh, what kind of experiences they have with reading books, and what are some of the genres they typically read, things like that. So I really like that format, and I'm going to stick with that format today. So let's jump into the first question. Why did you start this channel? The answer to that is my love for reading and books. I started my reading journey very early in my life, and I've been reading ever since, right, from my childhood. I got introduced in my childhood by my father and his friends, or I would say the first thing that I got introduced are comic books. And I'm not sure if a lot of people know this, especially if you are from India. In Tamil Nadu, that's where I'm from, southern part of India. We had a huge presence of comic books back in the 70s and 80s. So that's where I started. Like a lot of comic books, the Russian literature. So I had access to a lot of Russian literature that I read in my childhood that I'm still very fond of. So the reason I started this channel is to share the experiences that I have with different books that I read over the course of like 40 years. And also, I want to connect with people who are also uh, enthusiastic about books and reading. So far, I have been documenting my book content in Goodreads for the last several years. And I've been writing reviews as well for most of the books that I read. I typically read in the last maybe 5 years or 6 years, I've been reading 125 books minimum per year. So I normally set a goal for the year, and then I try to meet that goal, and I have been meeting the goal or even exceeding the goal for the past 5 or 6 years so far. So it all started with a small step, but that's where I am today. So the reason I started this channel is to share my experiences with reading and what I think about books through the reviews, and also recommend books that I found that were not discussed in most of the booktube community. So hopefully I will go in this journey of this booktube with you guys, and then also give and take recommendations. That way I will broaden my scope of reading. So that's the reason I started this channel. And then the second question is, why did you pick the name of this channel? So you might have noticed it is a very different name, like Silverfish book reviews. So I was really scratching my head to find a word that resonates with my booktube journey, but I struggled and I couldn't find something that is not already taken by other booktubers. And then this thing came to my mind. I'm not sure if people living in United States or even other part of the world have this problem. We in India, and especially in southern part of India, we had this infestation of, they call them the bookworm, but actually it's a bug, an insect that resides within old books, and unless and until you treat them with naphthalene balls or something. So my dad's library was full of them, and they eat the book. They chew through the books because I think they like the celluloid or something from the paper that's made, the wood content that eventually made into a paper. So, but they devour the books voraciously. So I thought I am one like that silverfish. I'm an avid reader, and then I love to reside among books like the silverfish, and also I devour the books. So that's the reason I picked this name. Nothing special. And then the next question is, so how I got into the reading. I think I kind of answered this in the very first question itself. Like I said, I started reading very early in my childhood, and then the reading journey uh, started with reading comic books, Tintin, Asterix, and also Indian comic books. And then eventually I got introduced to a lot of literature from my mother tongue, which is Tamil. And also, like I said, a lot of the Russian literature, which was readily available in India back in the 80s, uh, all through the 80s. And we had Tamil translation of most of the Russian literature available for us. And that's how it all started. And then the next question is, why do you love reading? I think it's a very good question. A lot of people will have different answers for this question, but I personally think I don't read just for enjoyment. I do that time and time again, but predominantly, I think the quest for knowledge is what drove me towards reading, and especially reading broadens your mind, rather than being very narrow and a local person or local your country, your state, or but it makes you an internationalist. It kind of makes you understand that human conditions are borderless. We all have the same aspirations, same love for things. We all have a same problems. We share anxieties. We it's borderless. We are all humanity has the same setup. I think so. Books helped me realize that quite a bit, and also I used to tell my friends, if you really want to broaden your mind, you have to do one of two things, or both of them. One is reading books extensively from different culture, and also travel. Travel is another thing that I really love. I that's why I even the video I posted is a travelogue. It's the very first video, the 10 recommendations that I gave. If you haven't checked it out, please go check it out. So and also it refines you as a human being. Um, and also the beauty of reading is whatever mindset you're in at that given juncture, the book, the literature will reflect every time in a different way. So, for example, the books I really loved in my childhood, and sometimes I go and revisit them, and I'll be surprised at how why did I even like this. But again, I think it's the process. You have to go through different types of literature. I wouldn't say there is a good or bad literature, but it's like for a given age you gravitate towards certain genre. So I used to read a lot of crime related books in Tamil back then, and some of those books, if I go back and read them now, it's very shallow, in my opinion. But again, I shouldn't judge like that, because those are the building blocks or stepping stones for me to go search for something even more meaningful and profound. So when people or friends ask me, how do you read this many books, or how do you uh, find time to read all that, and I tell them, start with something that's very simple, and once you do it so many times, it becomes a habit, and then naturally you will really will start looking for, or even go in search of books. So that's the thing that I really love about reading. And the second thing that I love about reading is to really do the research to line up the books that I want to read for the next 6 months or up to a year. So that's how I do it. I don't just randomly pick books. uh, and I do have a pipeline of books that's all waiting to be read for the rest of the year. But again, sometimes along comes a book that's more interesting, so I will let that book jump the line, and I will pick it up and then read that. But most of the time, I do the research to lay out all the books that I'm going to read, and that's that process that I really love. And Goodreads has been really helpful for me to find the books that I really liked, similar books that I liked, etc. So those are the two aspects of reading that I really like. And then the next question is, what books I read and what books I don't read. I think this is also a good one. So I used to love fiction in my childhood. I really read a lot of Tamil fictions, and even sometimes, even now I do. But slowly but surely, I started, kind of drifting away from fiction in the last 7 or 8 years, I would say. And when I started reading more nonfiction, I find them more interesting than fiction these days. I'm not sure if it's because of uh, the maturity that I got in reading books, or it's because of my age. But lately, I'm gravitating towards nonfiction quite a bit. And even within nonfiction, I do have a lot of genres that I really like. But I'll give you some of the genres I typically read here. Number one is history. I love history. I love world history or history of anything. Interests me immediately. So if you go to my Goodreads profile and look at my shelf, I'll have more books accumulated on the history shelf than others. And then the second genre in nonfiction that I really like is travelogues. Um, and like I discussed earlier, I'm because we all don't have a lot of time to travel, but we love to travel. At times, when you cannot travel, armchair traveling is the best thing to do. When I thoroughly enjoy reading books about travel, so that's the second genre I typically read. And then comes microhistory. Um, if you haven't heard of microhistory, I strongly urge you guys to go look it up. Um, I would probably start with somebody like Mark Kurlansky or Mary Roach. So that's how I got into. So microhistory is a very detailed history of just one thing, like salt, human cadavers, you name it. So I find that very interesting, and it's full of packed with information that we don't know normally. So that's another thing. And then I like books about anthropology, archaeology, humanity. That's another bucket I really read quite a bit. And then I do read books about war and also war journalism, like the correspondents who are in the battlefield and how they document what they saw from both sides. So I read books about all the wars, predominantly World War I and II, and then some of the wars that happened in the recent times, like Chechnyan War, the occupation of Afghanistan by the Soviets. The list goes on. So I read a lot of books about war, and then politics. Also, I read quite a bit. So I like to know both sides of the argument before I make up my mind, because I don't want to be biased without knowing the other side. So there's always two sides to anything, right? Like Spinoza said, no matter how thin, no matter how thinly you slice, there will be always two sides. And I really like that quote because you have to understand, you have to put yourselves in the other side person's shoes, and then see how you would have reacted, or how you would have uh, you know you would have reacted is the right word. So for certain ideologies. So I try to read a lot of books about politics. And then religion is another thing. I read history of religion, not necessarily the spiritual aspect of religion, but I'm more interested in the history of religion, or every religion in the world, right from even now I'm reading a book about the history of religion, a little history of religion. So that's another thing. And then the major buckets are natural history and evolutionary history. So I read books about um, natural history and also geology. Um, and then, so these are some of the broader buckets of nonfiction that I read, and I do read some others which I can't remember now. But yeah, so that you can see how I pick my books from this. When it comes to fiction, I these days I really, if I'm really uh, if I read too many of if I read a lot of nonfiction for a very long time, and if I need a change of the taste, then I go and pick some fiction. And then normally the fictions that I read these days are classics, like world classics. So like I said, Russian literature, I got it introduced very early, but now, the recent years, I'm searching for literature from other part of the world, like Latin American literature, which is not very well known within the reading circles of United States, or Europe, or even in India. So I want to introduce bring those things in my channel. And then the second thing is like a horror is another thing that I read if I really want to, just don't have to think about the book and just enjoy it. That's one genre that I like. And also the other genre I really like is post apocalyptic scenario books. Those kind of books I really love. Um, and then anything that's very different. I recently read a book, Tender is the Flesh. The book's story, even though the description and the premise is very macabre and gruesome, but it was a very profound book. And I will, if you haven't looked it up, I think the author is from Latin America. It was an English translation. Tender is the Flesh is one of the books that I read, which I really liked. And then finally, sci-fi, science fiction is another thing that time and time again, I go back and read. So these are the books I typically read, and there is this another whole set of discussion about my mother tongue, Tamil language books, and I do have a separate channel. I gave the link in my introduction video, and I will also give the link below. So I provide reviews of Tamil books and English books in that channel in Tamil, my mother tongue. So people who want to know the reviews in Tamil, go to that channel and you can check it out. But this channel I started just to give English reviews, so that I'm not really narrowing the audience base. I want everybody who can speak or understand English to get benefit out of this channel, um, for book recommendation, etc. So that was a very long-winded answer for what kind of books I like and don't like. Yeah, I didn't touch on the books that I typically don't like. Um, the books that I typically don't like are self-help books. I'm no, I don't know, for some reason I cannot read a self-help or a preachy book. I tried, I tried several times. Um, there are some exceptions. For example, I do have teenage daughters, and I read some books which helped me to be a listening parent. There are books that really help me. I have to agree, but overall, there are the books about how to change the way you are, or the way you do things. I typically stay away from those kind of books unless and until it's a very unknown subject for me, and I really suck at it, and then I will pick the book up and then kind of try to get some tidbits from those books. So that's one genre that I typically don't read. And then the second is poetry. For some reason, I cannot enjoy poetry in English. I can enjoy poetry in my mother tongue, but English poetry, it never struck a chord for me. So maybe I'm not wired that way. So I typically don't read poems in English, but yeah, those are the two genres that I typically don't read these days. I think the next question is, what am I reading right now, and how many books I typically read on a given year? I think I provided the answer for that in one of the previous questions. This might be a repetition, but again, right now I'm reading a brief, little history of religion is one of the books that I'm reading, and then Children of Ash and Elm. So the Children of Ash and Elm is the history of the Vikings. So these are the two books that I'm reading right now. But like you can see behind me, there is another shelf of unread books that I have lined up for the rest of the year. So I think right now I'm at the 88th book of the year, and so I pretty much have like 45 books to go. So hopefully I should be able to finish those. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention one genre which I read quite a bit these days. It's a graphic fiction slash nonfiction. So, like I said, comic books are available, has been available for quite some time now. But what I noticed recent years, there are quite a bit of really good nonfiction graphic books that are coming out, and that too, they are written on taboo subjects, or not very uh, talked about subjects. They are coming out with so many of those books. So some of the authors that I recommend, I will probably provide another video for all the graphic fiction non-fictions that I recommend. There is Persepolis. There is Joe Sakos, the Palestine. He was a war correspondent who observed the war in Chechnya. I'm sorry, not Chechnya, in Bosnia, and then other Palestine. So he actually wrote his experience in the cartoon or the graphic format, which I really love. So there are so many books that I can recommend in another video, but this genre is another thing I really like. I forgot to mention that before. I think the last question is, what does your book collection look like? Um, like I said, I've been reading for quite some time now, and I did have a big collection of books back in India. But since I've been living in the United States for several decades now, so I was not able to bring all the books back here. But typically, I don't buy all the books I read. I check them out from my library in my small town here, and you guys won't even believe how good my library is. They carry any book that I'm looking for, and if not, they really help me with getting it from another library. But I'm really lucky to be in close proximity to a really fantastic library. So all the books I read, typically I read them from the library. So I don't have an extent lot of collection. So if I bought all the books I read, I don't think I'll have enough room to shelf room to keep them in my house now. But Tamil books are something that I bring back from India every time I go there. I dedicate one suitcase full of books to bring them back. And then there are English books that after reading, if I thought that I should own this book, I purchased them. And again, I purchased them from half price books, or eBay, or I don't buy them brand new. So I try to buy them very cheap, so it doesn't really matter for me. So what I'll do is maybe I will post a separate video of my book collection, like a bookshelf tour. That way, you guys get to see what are the books that I own in my library behind me. So, all right. So those are the questions that I wanted to go over today with you guys, and I hope you guys made it this far. Sorry for the long video, and I'm excited to go on this journey, the BookTube journey, with you guys, and also bring meaningful content, honest reviews, and also, provide and receive book recommendations, and have a conversation with you guys regarding the act of reading. Thanks again for watching. I will see you guys in the next video very soon. Until then, bye bye.